So I'm here with Akhtar Khan. Akhtar Khan, your executive coach. Akhtar has a very long experience in real estate and also in M&A, coaching business owners, different founders on all levels, all from small family business owners to CEOs of banks in Dubai, etc. And also have built a huge portfolio of real estate, a lot of real estate, and also some M&A deals. And you've been featured in the M&A magazine quite recently, and also an expert in business psychology.
That's right. Absolutely. So yeah, good to be on this call with you and for us to just have a conversation really and, go down the rabbit hole, so to speak.
Yeah, I I was interested in one thing, and that is you've been very much into the psychological part of things in terms of deal making. And one thing that stood out for me was the Godfather method that you used in your career. Do you mind telling a little bit about the Godfather method, like how you're using it, what kind of situation it can be helpful to use this type of systems?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I'll say is this. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur now for it's about 32 years. It's been a long, long time, long journey. And in my early days, I went through a lot of struggles that people have. You're new, you're young, driven, and you don't know what you don't know, and you can't see what you can't see. And for me, one of the things that really helped me to grow and accelerate in my business was the understanding of human psychology. There's a saying by Carl Jung, which is, and Carl Jung was a famous psychologist, until you make the unconscious conscious, you keep repeating the same patterns and think it's fate. So for many people, we hit the same plateaus, or we hit like Groundhog Day, things kind of repeat with it's very unconscious. So for me, when I was in my early to mid 20s, and I started to really take psychology, personal development together, like really seriously, I saw the correlation between my success on a personal level and my success in business. The more I grew, the more I learned, the more I understood myself and understood people, the bigger the jumps and leaps I made in business. So it was that real foundational aspect for me where I realized, the best investment I'm ever going to make is in myself, and it's in my education. And it's not just strategy. Strategy is one part of it. It's building the psychology and the operating system in between your ears to be able to execute, which was a big thing. So that was the foundation. That's how I got started. And that's really where I started to see this direct correlation between how much personal development and understanding human psychology that versus how much more successful you are as an individual. And how this relates back to the Godfather method was that, when I first started closing deals or trying to close deals, and loads of deals that didn't work, or, they didn't quite go across the line, or we met resistance. So, that's how the Godfather method was what was born. It was like, a relentless passion for closing, because, there's a time I was incredibly passionate around doing property deals. I was young. I was very aggressively building a portfolio. I had a young family at the time. So I was a man on a mission, building my universe, building my kingdom. So it was important for me to be able to close deals. And there was several key factors that I realized that were stumbling points when it came to negotiation. And it's not what most people will tell you. There's lots of negotiation books. There's lots of standard, negotiation 101. These were some fundamental things that I was tripping over all the time. And it wasn't just me. I realized when I was talking to other people who were, if you like, prolifically closing deals, they had similar challenges. So I'll give a brief overview of the Godfather method. One of the first things that I had to learn to do was to give, and this is the first G of the Godfather method, was to give an outline of what was going to happen and take control of the conversation. Because if you don't, it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's a business seller, whether it's a real estate, a residential seller, they will take control and they'll tell you how great their business is or how their property is, etc. It's a power dynamic that's really important that you are in control, because if you're not in control, they're in control. They decide where the conversation goes, how it gets led, and normally it's going to be down towards what they want or their outcome.
Is that what traditionally is called frame? The frame.
Yeah, yeah, pre-framing. So in subjects like NLP or hypnosis, it's called pre-framing. So you put a frame and boundary around what the conversation is going to be. So you tell people what you're going to do. So you give the outline, you pre-frame, and you take control. This way you're leading the conversation. Okay. All too often, I've seen it before, and I did it in my early days, where you get on a call with someone, and before you know it, they're telling you how great the business is, or you've got a business broker involved, or an accountant, lawyer, and they're kind of driving things forwards. So it's important that you take it, you take control. You pre-frame that you're going to be leading the conversation, obviously with rapport and respect, and you take control and you lead the conversation where you want to. If you don't do this, if you don't take control of the conversation, someone else it will, and they'll steer it down a direction that's probably not going to be favorable for you. So this is one of the first things. This is the first G in Godfather method, right? That was the first thing. The other thing is, like, you have to obtain an understanding of why people are there. Like, people come and say, hey, you know what? Yeah, we're just selling our business or our real estate. That's a surface level conversation. What we really want to do is obtain an understanding. So they always obtain an understanding for why they're really there. So what does that mean? It means really dig into what their true pain points are. Why are they selling? What are they looking to do? Are they looking to retire? Is there a problem you don't know about? Because remember, like, a lot of times people will sugarcoat things, or a lot of sellers will not blatantly lie to you, but they'll lie by admission. They'll fail to tell you things. They won't tell you that this problem or that problem, or their sales were down, or the contract is ending. So, you have to really get a deep understanding of why they're there, why they're selling, and what's going on. Not beyond that, oh, I just want to sell my business, but why? What we're doing is we're really wanting to dig and find out what the pain points are. So this is where, we open a conversation by obtaining an understanding of why they're really there, and that's when we go to the next step, which is where you diagnose, like you really do a deep dive into their current circumstances. Now, most people will not tell you the truth about what's going on. They'll, sugarcoat it, sleep over it. They don't think it's necessary. I want to make an important distinction here. One aspect of the negotiation is understanding the business or the real estate or the asset that you're purchasing. The second part, and I think the more important part, is understanding the motivations, the mindset, the pain points, and the psychology of the seller. Because what will happen is, a lot of times people will sell something. If you don't understand what their true motivations are, you can't truly help them. So I've had people before where they've been selling their real estate, their property, and they just come up with a very fluffy, oh, we just want to sell and move on. Yeah, but why, right? And then when you start digging and digging and digging, you find out there's a problem. There's either a personal problem with them, or they've got a relationship challenge, or a health challenge, or financial challenge, etc., or there's a problem with the asset. It's a problem with the property. There's some subsidence. There's something difficult, but then just sugarcoat things. So it's really important that you take the time out to really dive into their current circumstances, because one aspect of it will be the business, but in most cases, especially like with the M&A transactions, if you're looking for businesses where you're dealing with baby boomers and you've got people that are wanting to retire, then you need to find out what their real circumstances are. And, you have a lot of people that want to retire, but what they don't tell you is, if their business has been on the market for a year, 2 years, that's when the real pain point is, because it now becomes a ball and chain around their neck, and they're getting grief from their wife because their wife wants to go and live in a little cottage somewhere, or they want to emigrate. They want their retirement. So we have to dig and re-diagnose what the problem is, not just the business, but on a much more personal, deeper level. Because when we understand what someone's pain points are, we understand what their hot buttons are, and what their motivations are, and how to do a deal in a way that's going to work for them. Because if you don't understand where they're at, you don't understand what their pain points are, you don't understand what the problem is, buying the business may not be the whole solution. Yeah, buying the business might be part of the solution, but actually a bigger part of the solution is relieving their pain or their stress, So this is where we get into the God of the Godfather: guide, open, diagnose, right? The next thing is this, and this is so important, okay? Right, to get people motivated, right, you have to get them to move away from pain. So, the first 3 steps, the setup, if you like, it gets them to really understand what their pain is, right? What their pain points are. Now, if we've taken the plaster off, right, they're going to sting a little bit if they're motivated sellers. If they've got a problem, they've got a challenge, and we've highlighted it, just by highlighting it and talking about what the problem is, it's going to put them in their pain. So what do we want to do? We want to get them out of
Do
their pain.
you also dig deeper into the pain then, or do you,
Yeah, we can go deeper on it because the thing is, the deeper you can go into the pain, the better. Because what happens then is most people are in denial; they don't want to see what the pain is. So if you're dealing with someone that says a motivated seller, perhaps they're facing a repossession or they've got financial challenges. The first thing is they've got the stress. I'm going to use an example for real estate. They'll have the stress of, hey, we might lose our property or we might lose our investment property. If they're living in it, the second that impact is, well, how it's going to impact their family or their relationships. The next thing might be, if they have to sell or they get repossessed, the property gets taken away, then they have to relocate their kids. So we go deep, like how many pain points are there? In the M&A space, it's like, why are they selling? Right? What's the real pain point? Is it a personal thing? They've got health challenges? What's the consequences of not selling? What's the consequences of staying in the business? What's the consequences to them on a personal level? Like, are they on the brink of divorce? Are they having marital problems? Is there other challenges that we don't know about? You really need to understand this because part of doing the deal is going to be the acquisition. The other part is helping them to get to a better place. And it's not always just about the business or the asset that you're purchasing. So what we have to do is really, really dig deep and find out what the entirety of their pain points are. And this is going to come from being a skilled communicator, a skilled negotiator, but also having a lot of deep empathy. I think the thing with, especially in the M&A space, a lot of people are about the kind of mechanics of the business, the numbers, they kind of get the nuts and bolts of the business, but what they miss is the softer heart and soul of the individual that you're dealing with. So you can present all the numbers and deal structures that you want, but if you don't build enough of a connection and have empathy and compassion for what they're going through, they're probably not going to want to do the deal with you. It's going to feel a bit cold.
it's people are a lot in the logical thinking,
Correct.
but not the emotional connection. And one thing
Correct.
that many, I think, is ignoring also is the relationships to the employees when you are to buy a company.
Oh, absolutely. Like, you just hit it on the nail on the head there. It's very easy to be logical, but you've got to understand people are emotionally driven, right? So they'll emotionally, be driven to make a decision, but then they'll justify it with logic. So we are all emotionally driven creatures. So it's really important we have the emotional intelligence, the EQ that's required to understand the individual, the human being more so, as well as the deal structure. When I go to do an M&A deal, I'm normally looking at 80% psychology, 20% strategy, and 20% mechanics because you will understand the psychology behind the business seller or the business sellers if there's more than one. And then, you need to understand their connection with the team. A lot of people, when it comes to selling businesses, especially if it's like family run businesses or small businesses, if they've been there for a while, it's always like a family dynamic. So they have connections with staff members and so forth. You've got to show care and compassion to understand what their values are around selling the business. You mentioned earlier on, I write articles and I've written articles in a couple of M&A magazines. I wrote an article about understanding people's values. And this is a topic that most people do not know about. When you understand someone's values are deeply held beliefs around what's important to an individual, and they vary from context to context. So, you might have a set of values as a father around your kids. You might have a set of values around, being a husband. You might have a set of values around being a sportsman or businessman. Everyone's got different values in different contexts. Same with business sellers. One of the golden things that I've used and I've taught my clients is when you understand how to elicit people's values, you don't have to sell because all you do is you package up a deal that meets their needs and meets their values. A lot of the time, it's not about the money or the deal structure. It's about keeping the name above the door, keeping people that have been loyal members of the team that have been there for 10, 15 years, making sure they're good, they stay there. These are things that are important to the business seller. So when you get caught up in logic, you might talk numbers, but they're going to be thinking, well, they're not going to be thinking, they're going to be feeling more from an emotional perspective. This is where the mismatch happens. It's also where a lot of deals don't go through because, they understand the structure and they just completely missed connecting with having a rapport and an understanding with the business seller where the seller is emotionally.
I think like even people that are very much in the logic, like me, my personality trait in the Myers-Briggs, either you believe in that or not, but the Myers-Briggs is quite good. I'm the INTP, which is 3% of the population that's logical. But it doesn't mean that we're in the end we're making decisions totally based on emotions, even though the reasoning to get there is kind of explained for ourselves. Uh, I Do you agree, or what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is why it's important. Like a lot of the Godfather method goes into the emotionality to understand what's going on. So, we went through the first three steps. The second phase, if you like, is really about getting them into their emotions because this is where they're going to be motivated to make a decision, right? So, we painted the picture of all the pain points and all the struggles and challenges that they've got. The next thing to do is what we call future pace and build their vision, which is, well, what do you want instead? What's going to happen after you've sold the asset, after you've sold the business? You're going to sell your business, take your money and sail off into the sunset, or, go and have your retirement, or you're happily ever after. It's important that you hold that picture in their mind and you ask them questions to say, look, what are you going to do once this is sold? So they can associate into that vision of what the future is going to look like once they do a deal with you. Okay. So, this is important because like this is what people drives people as well. It's the vision, it's compelling, it's part of their value system to move on, right? So when they can't move forwards in the way they want to and overcome the problem, it puts people in a lot of pain. So, when you start to build that future, it compels them to move forwards, it motivates them to move forwards. The next thing we need to do, the A in father, is really get them to own and ask why they can't do it on their own. Why can't they sell it? Why can't they grow it? Why can't they scale it? Like, what's the issue? Even just to keep this super simple, like in real estate, I've been out to people before where I look around and go, this is actually quite a simple fix. Sometimes people are just mentally tired or they're exhausted or they don't want to deal with something. It's like a probate sale. They've inherited a property. There's a lot of emotional charge and memories around it. That can be one reason. Or, they've been in a business where they've been doing things for 20 years and they're tired of it. I've done a lot of property stuff. Property doesn't excite me anymore. I wouldn't really be that motivated. I'd rather walk away from it and do something else more exciting. So, you got to kind of get an admission from that as to why they can't move forwards on their own, why they can't sell it, why they can't grow it, why they can't scale it. And it's important because when you do this, you kind of lovingly, kind of rubbing salt in the wound or twisting the knife, right? So we've got it twisting the knife because what you do is you trigger emotion and you gain commitment. Yeah, most people are in denial of their pain. They're in denial of their frustration. They sugarcoat it or sleep over it.
I
Yeah,
experienced that a lot. I'm meeting a lot of startups and also, let's say, small funds, but especially startups. Let's say they are in the Series A, B, maybe C also. They're still humans. So what they think, I asked them, what will happen now if you don't raise, or if you don't raise this fast as you wanted to raise? And then they kind of sugarcoated, and I can sense that they're trying to put emphasis on the things that are good. I asked them things like, how much runway do you have? And then I think the numbers are skewed towards showing good numbers, and that they don't. Sometimes if I start off with a meeting with a company they want to raise, they might even say, hey, we don't need any investors now. And this is all, I think, like protecting layers from them. And then sometimes I'm very straightforward with them. I just tell them like, hey, I'm not going to waste my team's time, or my time, or your time, if you don't have an issue, or if you're not in need of our service. And then when I turn it like that, sometimes then I can get into the pain and the problem to then find a solution for them and help them. I guess you had similar experience. I'm just curious about your take on. I guess this happens in all humans. This is how we want to sugarcoat things. And
yeah, it's denial. I mean, in essence, it's denial. You've got people. Sadly, I've seen so many businesses that have been valued by brokers. And when you look at the valuations, they're, in my opinion, very ridiculous valuations for small businesses because, a broker's come along, filled them with optimism, told them it's a 4, 5, 6 times multiple for a small, really it's like a self-employed business, right?
I'm laughing because this is exactly what I experienced. I've been in like many M&A deals, or many for me. Like I'm quite young. It's around over 20, let's say 24. And many times they are locked in Sweden here with the brokers of businesses. They lock them in 2 years, and they sold them what we call in Swedish expression is a gold and green forest, guld och gröna skogar. They said that they're gonna get this multiple, and then they're stuck with them. So either if the guy doesn't sell it, if some other one comes to them, then sometimes they're locked in also for because that's connected to the commission of the broker. So obviously they're gonna believe that they're gonna have this huge money grab, but that's not how business work, right?
It's not, and unfortunately, you probably got, I think there's a lot of, small businesses where a lot of these business owners don't really understand mergers and acquisitions. They don't understand valuations. I went once to hop on a call with a student of mine, and they valued a business that was making like 130 grand. I think it's EBITDA, and they valued it £1 million. I was like, hang on a second, how you valued this at like almost, 8, 9 times? Like, what's the logic behind it? And the justification from the broker was, they've got a contract with the big PLC. I said, how much is the contract worth? Contract was worth 40 grand. I said, so how, I don't get it. Is there a bigger contract? What am I missing here? Like, forgive me if I'm being stupid. Like, what am I missing here? The broker just thought because they've got a contract that could become something bigger, potential, he valued it at like probably 8 times more than what the business was worth. So, it was, in my opinion, it was a pretty dumb valuation, right? And I was like, look, how is this going to work? And this didn't account for any adjustments to the EBITDA because, the guy was a owner operator. So, the problem that you've got is it's a waste of time for us when we look at these kind of businesses because unrealistic expectations have been set. And it's really tough for the business seller because they've been sold a dream and they become wedded to the idea. So this guy was wedded that he was going to sell for £1 million and, sell off into the sunset. Business was probably worth like 150 grand, if someone wanted to buy it. And it wasn't that great in the grand scheme of things. The problem is when people have done this mentally, psychologically, they've spent the money. So this guy was like, hey, you know what? What am I going to do with £1 million? And he psychologically spent it. So to go from, hey, my broker told me my business was worth £1 million. Reality is it's probably going to be worth 150 grand to someone who wants it. And it's really a job rather than a business. It's such like night and day difference. It's such disparity. The mind can't hold two such opposing ideas. So this is where we get cognitive dissonance, right? We don't want to see it. This is what the film The Matrix is about, the red pill, blue pill. It's like, you take the red pill and wake up and then you see the truth for what it is. It's uncomfortable. So for a lot of people, especially guys and even female business owners, when you're at that age of retirement and you've been sold this dream of, hey, you're going to get a, seriously big multiplier. And then 2-3 years later, they're sat on the market. It's a very tough place for the average person to come back from because they've been wedded to the idea of, well, I've got 1 million, 2 million, 10 million, whatever it is. So to go from like, hey, it's worth 1 million because this is what the brokers told you, to actually it's worth, 150 grand. It's such a big jump to get people to actually shift to that way of thinking. I've never been able to do it. And I'm a skilled negotiator, right? Because what's happened is the bar is set so high and it's set unrealistic. So that's the problem.
Talking about funny situations, the worst I had, I really liked this guy, but and we're friends, but the worst I had was a guy. I was there with almost my full board, and then he was talking about these public PE numbers at the public listings, and he was not listed, and he's far from it being listed. So it's not only the Nile. The Nile is not only a river in Egypt, but it's a real thing with the Nile. But also, sometimes I think we can have this delusional way of thinking of ourselves and our businesses, even and have this, you call it grandeur.
Delusions of grandeur.
Delusions of grandeur. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just partly, this is why understanding, like, human psychology is so important because it's not always taught, in schools of business or, in the M&A space. Everyone gets into the mechanics and the accounting and the logic of doing deals, which is all useful, right? All very, very useful stuff. But actually, if we want to get someone to make a decision that is going to be, towards doing a deal with us, it's important that we understand how they think, how they operate, right? So yeah, you do have a lot of people that have got, delusions of grandeur. I mean, I've seen many businesses where people, when you value them up, they're like, this is not even a business. You know, um, they've got ridiculous multiples on them, and they don't account for certain things. And you're right. You get a lot of brokers. The difference with brokers and real estate agents here in the UK is with the real estate agent, there's no fee to list. With the business broker, they make their money when they list and then if they sell it. So, it's, I'm not saying every broker does this, but a lot of brokers just put people in a place of optimism. Um, and they've got this thing listed and it doesn't always work. I mean, there are some fantastic brokers out there as well. I haven't met a few, but, a lot of the brokers here just tend to be, in my opinion, according to my criteria for buying deals and making deals work, they're just unrealistic. I think they try it on with multiples and see what happens, and then they aim for the, what's the saying? They aim for the
In the UK, do they lock them in also in contracts, so that either if they sell or not after 24 months, if it comes in a deal some other way, they're still getting paid, or is that only in Sweden?
I think with the brokers, they definitely do things like that. The brokers have got contracts like that. But I think when you're doing a deal yourself, then the contracts are quite fluid. It's whatever you agree.
I'm really curious. We were now at the later part of the Godfather method. What's the last part?
Yeah. So the last three parts really is really your offer. So the H is for help, right? It's like really highlighting how you can help, but asking for permission to share, because otherwise, again, this is a small distinction that has a massive impact, because otherwise it's unsolicited advice. So if I'm speaking to someone and I say, look, can I give you some sort of uh, guidance here as to how I may be able to help you? And they normally say yes. And once they say yes, then I can go into, look, here's how I can help you with your business. Here I can help you restructure it. Here's how I can help with this problem, this problem, this problem. And I give them an overview of what it is that I can do or what I can bring to the business to make some significant changes, right? The next thing that we do is we explain expertise in a bit of an elevator pitch, which is where I go into, as you've introduced me, I'm the guy that's done, I think near close to 230 deals now in my time. I've got a lot of experience in real estate. I've bought numerous businesses, and I'm still active right now. I'm just building a couple of other groups, up right now with my boards, right? So there's a lot of things I can do that will position me the right way. So why do you want to, why do you want to demonstrate your expertise? I think in the M&A space, it's really important because, it's your confidence that's going to sell. Can you, when you're doing any kind of transaction on a business, right? Whether you're writing a check for it, whether you're getting finance on it, or whether you're doing some kind of creative deferred consideration, the seller normally has an emotional attachment to the business. So you need to demonstrate competency. Can you look after it? Can you, maintain it? Can you look after it? In essence, we're asking for the keys to the Ferrari. The next thing is we've got to prove that we're able to drive a Ferrari, maintain a Ferrari, and insure a Ferrari. Okay. So that's kind of where we get to. It's, again, there's psychological triggers around this, because when you start to demonstrate your expertise with people, can position you as an authority, can position you as someone who knows what you're doing, knows what you're talking about. And if you have just a little bit more information, a bit more knowledge and understanding than them, whether it's a property situation or it's an M&A situation, it kind of gives you the advantage. Not that we want to hoodwink anyone, it gives you the advantage because you're then in a position where you're able to lead from a place of authority, from a place of authenticity, and you can explain what the process is, how it works. I mean, there's a lot of business owners that don't fully understand the process. You get to talk about them. So, when you explain your expertise and you kind of give your elevator pitch, I mean, I tell people what I do, what I've done in property, what I've done in business. My real passion is business psychology. And I tell them what I do. It just gives them that degree of comfort that you're an authority, you know what you're talking about. And the final part is R for reveal. But this is where you reveal what your offer is and what your either incentive pricing is or the structure is going to be depending on what your offer is. So if we're going to do this on an M&A deal, this is where you would come back, and we do this all the time. It's like, look, buddy, I know the broker gave you an 8 times multiple on this business. Here's where we see it at realistically. And this is where we reveal our offer and how we came to that conclusion, because I think it's important, especially if you're in the M&A space and you're, if you like, down valuing a business based on, the broker's valuation. It's important that you come up with a way to prove your authority and credibility, but also how you came to that number. Yeah, how you came to that, so they don't feel like, hey, I've just pulled out a number out of the air. So just to give you an example on this, to make it kind of simple, it's like when I used to go and do a lot of real estate deals, if ever I dealt with an agent or, as director of vendor, I would say, look, here's the property value. This is what I need to make a profit for me to, for it to be worthwhile. I deduct a certain amount, and here's my costs. This is buying costs. This is refurb costs. This is building costs. In order for me to buy this property, it has to be at this figure. I know it's less than what you want, but that's where it is. So I will do the same in an M&A scenario, which is like, look, buddy, I know the broker said that this is a 10 times multiple. No, it really isn't. And here's why. Here's the comparables. So I give a logic and understanding, a reasoning behind how I've come to the figures I've come to, what I'm happy to pay, and what my criteria is, and then I just make the offer. But it's important that we do it in that way. So if we just have a recap, again, you guide the conversation and you take control. You open, right? So you can obtain an understanding of why they're there. You go into diagnosing, like you do a deep dive into their circumstances, not just the business, their personal circumstances, so you can understand what their pain points are. And what we do at that point is really want to get them to highlight what pain they have instead of sugarcoating or distract themselves. Okay. The next thing we do is we future pace, we build their vision, which is like, we've got people to think about their pain. Great, they've thought about it, they're motivated. Now where do they go? So this is where we paint that picture and we build the vision of what's going to happen post sale, post property, whatever it may be, post exit. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is we've got to trigger emotion in them to gain commitment, which is that we call it twisting the knife. It sounds wicked, but you know what? It's not really, because if you got someone that really could, and you believe hand on heart, you can help someone. People's indecisiveness and inaction, it just costs them and they stay stuck. So, sometimes ripping a plaster off for someone, you might think it's a mean thing to do, but it's the most loving thing to do to get people motivated to do something, that is for their own good. So, we twist the life in, which is we trigger emotion, we gain commitment. Then the last part is we offer help. We highlight and ask the question as to how we can help, what we can do. So when I go to a lot of the M&A vendor meets, it's not always about can we close the deal, shake hands on the deal. Part of what we do is like, look, we can help you as well. Here's what we can do. Either buy the business, or we can come in as a JV partner, or we can just do some consultancy work for you guys and train you guys up on what needs to happen. Then we explain our expertise, which is, in the case of someone watching this, is what's your expertise? Is it that you've had, a career in a certain profession that's useful to the acquisition that you're doing? Is it that you've been in mergers and acquisitions for a while? Is it that you're in financing? You explain your expertise and you give a little elevator pitch. Again, it's just to build in the mindset of the seller an understanding of trust and faith in your competency and your ability to do things. And the final thing is just reveal what your offer is. So, I've done this many times before. It used to be uncomfortable at first, but when you've got someone that's a crazy multiple, to bring them down and say, look, we see it as a 2 times multiple, and here's why. Okay. And then you say, look, I back this up with evidence. Please tell us why you got a 7, 8, 9, 10 times multiple on this, right? Again, it's doing it in a way that's got compassion, it's friendly.
This is lovingly. I think what's different here also from most sales gurus out there is this is actually coaching them on a personal, individual level. You're helping them with their life to get better. So it's I heard about this concept. If you're in a lot of sales cycles, like win, 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 that book and everything. But this is actually giving them help. This is actually helping them find out what their values are. Maybe
Yeah.
they haven't even made a value elicitation, and they might be successful in selling their business, but maybe they're selling it at the wrong time to the wrong people or for the wrong reasons if they don't know it themselves.
Absolutely, and you're right. Well, we can go deeper with this stuff, which is to understand, that not just their values around business, but their values around life. Especially if you're dealing with a baby boomer that's retiring. So just to highlight the last three: offering your help, explaining your expertise, your elevated pitch, and position yourself the right way. And then the final part is reveal what your offer is. Reveal what it is and why it is and how you came to that conclusion. Right. So, just to keep it simple, a simple analogy is, you might have a couple of properties side by side. One is refurbished and doesn't need any work. It's on the market for 500K. There's one that's, next door, it's identical, but it needs a full refurb, right? It might be on the market for 350. Okay. But whenever you come up with your offer, it's like, here's the offer and here's why I've come to that figure. It's not just like pulled a figure out of the air. It's like, look, here's the associated costs, or here's what needs to happen, or here's the cash injection that's required in the business. If you do that and you follow the structure, you will close more deals than probably anyone else will. I mean, that's why we call it the Godfather method, not because we're putting a gun to people's head, but we're making an offer that people can't refuse. The thing they can't refuse isn't the amount of money or the terms. What they can't refuse, metaphorically speaking, is someone who's going to understand them, get to really see them and understand what they're going through and help them to meet their needs and create a win-win. So, a lot of the time when I bought businesses and assets from people, it's because it's become a headache for them because they've got something else going on in their life.
Brilliant.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I'm taking a lot of away from this. So I will rewatch this myself, even though we've gone through The Godfather a little bit before. One thing I was also thinking about in regards to your career and the 210 transactions behind you, what are some of the most kind of underestimated traits that separate a successful real estate or, let's say, an M&A transaction from the rest? Does it tie back to this, or is it like 100% purely numerical, or
Yeah, my take on this would be, look, the Godfather method is a framework, right? It's a really helpful framework, and it's based on understanding psychology triggers, and things like that. It's where it's there's a lot behind it, a lot of psychology, a lot of neuroscience behind it. Okay, but it's just that it's a tool. Yeah, ultimately it's about you, and it's about how you show up. So I think the distinction that's really important around doing deals, whether it's real estate, whether you're raising capital, whether it's in the M&A phase, one thing I think is incredibly important is like understanding yourself and how you show up, and your energy. And when I say the word energy, it's your frequency, which is based on your thought process and your mindset transmits. People pick up on your vibe and energy. So, inside our community, and, obviously our brand is called Super Conscious. We help people to become really conscious of many things. But if we can focus, and this is what we primarily do, is focus on your state of being. Because if you deliver this from a place of being calm, being relaxed, people pick up on that energy, and you have a better chance of leading them and them following. If you're there in that hustle and grind mentality, people are just going to feel it and be repelled by it. So I think, understanding psychology, understanding what we're talking about here will help you to close more deals because you understand how people think and what they need and how to operate, but also help you to like level up in terms of what you want to do. So I think the key thing is to come back to your question. The learning and understanding of psychology and personal development, I think has been a massive factor for me. It's been a massive factor for the clients that I coach, including yourself and your co-founder. I've seen a massive shift in you guys since we've been working together, because it comes down to this. When we're connecting with other human beings, especially in the sales role, it's so easy to go, let's build some rapport. And, you might build a little bit of rapport. You might find 2 or 3 things in common. It builds a bit of rapport. I would say that rapport is the absolute bare minimum. What you want to do, and this has probably been my secret sauce, is to be able to build deep connections with people so that you have a bond rather than just rapport. When you've got that level of closeness with someone, or people have got that level of closeness with you or intimacy with you, and I'm not talking about physical intimacy, I'm talking about the emotional intimacy that comes with a connection. That's where you'll accelerate. That's where I accelerated. Because what that does is when you can create those deep connections with people, which is beyond rapport, it builds massive amount of trust. And when that trust is there, then you're able to do more deals. You'll also be able to do deals in more favorable terms for you. I've done incredible deals, multi-million pound deals on the straight, on the strength of a handshake, and there've been virtually no money in the deal. Why? Because they trust my energy, they trust me, and they've also demonstrated the competency to lead the board of directors. So it is really about relationship building, and it's about building those deeper connections with people. Even if you're going to meet that person for a brief while, having a deeper connection builds deeper trust. And it just means that when you're in that right state of mind, people will pick up on it. Hustle and grind and victimhood are two states driven by fear. So if you're in like hustle and grind, when you're going to do a deal with someone, they'll feel the push, they'll feel the energy. A lot of the time they'll be put off with it, by it. If you can go there with the open mind of, hey, I'm going to go with the flow, I'm going to see if we can do a deal here, but I'm not attached to the outcome. We're going to go, we're going to meet, have a coffee, look through the paperwork, the books, the team, whatever it is, and it just puts you in that state of being. If you're operating and you're embodying that, what we call the super conscious state of mind, and you then use the Godfather method, your chances of closing they're almost 10x, because it's the connection that makes people feel safe and trusted. And as long as you can come up with a deal that meets their needs, not necessarily their wants, meets their needs in a way that works for you, then you're going to get more deals done.
I mean,
And that was really the secret of my source.
this that's the sauce, right? And I really appreciate it. And there's more to it also. I know from experience, and it's been a huge differentiator in my life and with my relationship to my wife, to my children, to colleagues, and to like my family, my brother family, like my mother, father. Like it's even my brother's wife said that like you're different after this coaching. So we come from this. I'm grown up in Hallsberg. It's like a small mill town, like the biggest railway junction in Sweden, and it's all about working. Like working hard, but that's not exactly how you do deals, according to what we've been talking about now. The last what is it, 40 minutes? It's levels to this, and I'm curious. Someone that is going from, like, what advice would you give to an operator looking to scale from a local real estate into international M&A? Because you've done that, so that's a question I'm curious about to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think it's all about your mindset and psychology, because the belief system that got you here won't get you there. So if you're, operating a small business or a small portfolio, that's great. But if you want to go to the next level, you have to change your belief system. You have to change your operating system. So if you think about it, there's levels and layers of complexity to this. I mean, we could probably talk on this for hours. You've been to one of our retreats that we run. We take people through a process that really helps them to expand their mindset and go through like what we call the quantum leap. They're called the quantum leap retreats for a reason. I had to do this myself. This is part of my journey. When I became an entrepreneur, I struggled. I went through a lot of stress, a lot of overwhelm. I confidence issues, like everything that you could have going against you, I had going against me. This was part of the reason why I got so much into the personal development and psychology, because I wanted to fix myself and get over my own blocks. So, if you want to level up and you want to like expand, so many people get caught up on strategy. Yeah, yes, the strategy is important, but my personal belief is it's only 10% strategy. If you think about it, if strategy was that all you needed, then you wouldn't need mentors, you wouldn't need coaches, you wouldn't need guides. You just go read a book, download the strategy off the internet. Here's how you go from 500K to 5 mil. There's a strategy for growth, right? But the problem is execution. Why is execution difficult? Why is putting it into practice difficult? Why is getting the rubber to hit the road difficult? Because we're the person that's driving the vehicle or driving the business forward. So, we have to upgrade our belief system, or we have to.
It's a simple question. Would you rather be thought by someone that has read 200 books or done 200 deals? Like that's
Yeah,
if it's a
yeah.
huge difference.
Exactly, because there's one thing to have the intellectual knowledge of how to do something. There's a completely different experience to have actually done it, because you've got visceral experience of doing the muscle. You've gone out, you've done it, you've lived it, you've breathed it, you've got the battle scars for it, and you've got the trophies from it. So execution is like very, very difficult for most people. So when you develop the right mindset, this is kind of what we do with our coaching and our consultancies. We help people to really execute and grow on those, where it is they're in their business. Like I say, we've got people who are solopreneurs starting out right the way up to, we work with founders of fintech companies that are, doing billions of revenue, right? So, all across the board, it doesn't matter where you're at, the psychology is the same. Every time you hit a certain level, you have to upgrade your mindset to keep leveling up. It's like the matrix. A lot of the time we're stuck in the matrix, we don't see it. As I said earlier on, Carl Jung says, until you make the unconscious conscious, you'll keep repeating the same patterns.
Even I can repeat, like like one thing now, I gone from this workaholic behavior, and then sometimes I have like rebounds. But now I'm conscious about it. So let's say I stay up and work to 4 o'clock one night, and I'm not gonna do that a whole week, or I'm not gonna stay in that patterns, because now I'm conscious about it, and I also felt the difference in my emotions, in my body, in my nervous system. So
Yeah.
it's
Uh,
it's a permanent fix, I would say. But still, I'm still need this type of community. You're building that, and I'm part of different communities also, of course. But I think this is also a huge part of it, to be accountable, community, also always wanting to learn and develop.
Yeah, absolutely. You become the sum total of the people you spend time with. So if you want to grow and you want to grow your business, it's very important. This is one of the difficult things with being like human beings. We don't always understand this. The minute you go to level up and do something that's outside the consciousness of the people around you, they'll start questioning, like, Jonas, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? They don't get it. And what happens, their fears and insecurities will come up. They'll start asking you questions. Well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Their fear and doubt rubs off on you, then you start to question yourself, which is why it's fundamentally important. If you are a small operator and you want to get into international M&A, go find some buddies, right, that are doing international M&A. Go find a networking group. Go find, people who are, who are active in that area, and go out and like befriend them. Go be in that, because what will happen is they've got consciousness around doing those types of deals. So they'll be telling you what they've done, what they can do, because they know. Whereas you might have friends, family who mean it well, but questioning what you're doing. So having a community of like-minded people that are doing the thing that you want to do, or aspiring to do the thing that you want to do, is fundamentally important. I mean, we have an online community that's quite mixed. We've got solopreneurs, we've got CEOs in there. Ultimately, what we do, everything is underpinned by peak performance psychology and understanding the things that we're talking about here. But you have to upgrade your mindset. You have to upgrade the operating system of your mind. Just reading a book or going to, an event isn't going to be enough. It's an ongoing journey. Just like when you have a phone or you have a laptop, you have to do iOS updates on a regular basis, because life changes, things change, and things have to be upgraded. It's the same mindset, to go from, being a small owner operator to perhaps having a group of companies or running multiple groups. Each one of them requires a different operating system, a different way of thinking, which is all underpinned by your self-concept and identity. That governs everything. And if you don't get this stuff right, dialed in properly, what will happen is you probably procrastinate, self-sabotage, because, the mind wants to go back to homeostasis. It wants to go back to what's familiar, not necessarily what's good for you, because the brain, part of the brain, the amygdala, all it wants to do is to keep you alive. Doesn't care about anything else. If you're alive, that's fine. If you're suffering and you're in poverty, doesn't matter, because you're alive, right? That's all he wants you to do. The safety mechanism.
I think also we call the word cantarell glasögon is like chanterelle glasses. Like, do you see the opportunities? Do you see the chanterelles in the woods? Or if you are to buy, let's say, I don't know, a Jaguar, because we're from UK. Let's say you're gonna buy Jaguar, a certain Jaguar, then you start seeing the Jaguars everywhere. So I think that setting the intention, that's something also I've been thought by you and also with your partner Leslie Frater. I think that is very interesting. Sowing and reaping, or the intention, the law of attraction. It's a similar contrast.
Absolutely. Like when you start to set an intention, the way the subconscious mind works is that it will find the opportunities for you, it'll filter it for you, you know? So that's why setting intentions and working on mindset is so fundamentally important. You know, I work with a lot of CEOs, a lot of people come to me and they're like, I want to go from point A to point B. And I'm like, okay, great. What have you tried? And they're like, well, we've tried this and we know this. I'm like, well, that would work. What's stopping you? And it's normally down to them, right? You know, confidence issues, fear issues, belief system issues, trauma issues. So if we can get the psychology, like, you know, sorted out, then it's going to be way more easier, especially when we bring the mind into alignment. There's no need for like hustle grind, you know, using willpower and discipline.
You said one of this expression I liked was "let go and let God." So I think there's levels to it. Obviously, we have our own hindrances. Then I think I believe in God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. I believe in Jesus. But you can believe in whatever you want. But these laws are actually going to work, whether you're a Buddhist, Hindu, Muslim, Jewish, Christian, whatever. And I think that from my perspective, the Christian perspective, I believe that God wants much more for everything, for you, for me, for everyone. And now when we take away these borders, these filters of the psyche or the soul, then we're more open to receive from God. I think that's
Absolutely.
also part of it.
Absolutely. And, you know, for those watching this that are not spiritual, like, let's just make an important distinction. Faith doesn't mean religion, right? What you're doing is you're just having faith and trust that things are going to work out in your favor, that there is an abundance there. Because guess what? These are the filters you've got in your mind. This is why, you know, working on your mindset, you know, working on your belief system, upgrading your operating system, you know, it doesn't take more effort. It doesn't take, you know, working hard. You know, you mentioned that you know, grew up in Hallsberg. I've been there, you know, I've been there in Sweden when I was there one time, you know, Stockholm and Hallsberg. This mentality and this mindset of working hard, we don't need to do that when we've got the operating system, our mindset in the right place, because we don't need to work hard, right? We work smart, we work efficiently. So when you sit back and you're operating from this high level of consciousness, you know, asking good quality questions like, what's the fastest, easiest, safest way for me to grow and scale this business? You know, sometimes we get caught up in what do we know what to do. So it's easier to go, let's double our business, right? Because we go, oh, just double down on what we do. But that's when there's a restriction, because we're thinking within the parameters of what we already know.
There's a disconnect.
You really want to like,
there's a huge disconnect. And also like 2024, I was working with outbound marketing, with generative AI and outbound prospecting. And I realized that I sent like 16,000 emails. For one offer, it was 8,000. And for the other offer, the capital raising I was starting to do just for more smaller startups, beginning with that. And it was 8,000. Like I can send that per day. Like it's just a mind shift, you know?
yeah, it absolutely is. It really is like a mindset shift. Like, you know, you can start to direct the mind to look for the right opportunities from a place of ease. You know, one of the things that we teach, it's not just about the mindset, it's about your state of being, it's about the energy that you're in, or, you know, are you operating from a place of fear or are you in flow? And we teach people to get into flow. It's so counterintuitive to what people have been taught in entrepreneurship around hustle, grind, work around the clock. It's not necessary. You know, you actually can achieve a lot more by being in the right state of mind and allowing your mind to.
I think also really caring about people. I think salespeople can learn about this. Obviously, we've been both in sales a lot, and I was more towards the ROI type of sales. Is very good in digital marketing, but now connecting with people, understand them, feel what makes their heart sing, and really coaching them is going to be a huge differentiator moving forward compared to what I've done before in terms of sales, because everything is sales. Also raising capital is kind of sales. It is sales psychology, and I think that this energy that you send out of actually loving them and caring for them, I think that's quite different from what's been taught.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of salespeople that are very much, they've got a Wolf of Wall Street mindset. It's like just get the sale, just get over the line. Don't care about the individual. Don't worry about it. It's very much fear, scarcity, and not really caring. If you come across like you genuinely want to serve someone, if you change the word selling for serving, how can I serve this person? Is what we've got a good fit for them? Are we a good fit for them? And are they a good fit for us? Is this going to genuinely help them? If you believe that, you genuinely going to help them, it's going to make a difference in their life.
Yeah,
Do what you
then
can
it's like
to give
part
to them.
we've been talking about in the communities also is very interesting. Like going from thinking that you're a closer to identify as a deal maker or identify as someone that is opening up a new business relationship. You see,
Yeah,
it's I look I I think it sounds and feels very different to actually open up a new business relationship if we can help. And yeah, I think maybe we could talk forever about this. It's a nerd interest of mine also, but uh, I think it's a huge differentiator in how you view the value increasing exchange that's actually sales is. Or
absolutely. I know we're coming up to time right now, but we can definitely have another conversation around the sales psychology, and we can go down a bit of a rabbit hole there of how, because there's a lot of things that we could talk about around how, again, it comes back to what I was saying earlier on. You want to go beyond rapport and you want to create connections with people. And if you genuinely care and think, can I help this person, what they want, what they need, you show up with love and compassion, then people will feel that. And then they'll feel actually you genuinely want to help. Or even if you say, no, this is not the right thing for you, I think you should do that over there. People respect that. You're not the typical salesy person.
yeah,
You're more there to help and support them.
also I think like with the Godfather method, almost at the end you were saying that you were actually pointing out what's wrong or what's the problem. I think that's from a Scandinavian perspective, that's very much what we like to hear here, to have tell it straight and shoot straight shooters and tell it as it is. And I think that's something cultural thing that we can also bring into the world of business. They can be very much appreciated no matter in what culture you are in. Not beating around the bush, but actually
Yeah.
saying things as they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Suspend courtesy for respect and just like, um, if you haven't got the feedback of your blind spots, the things you can't see, you don't change. People, again, it comes back to what we said. Until you make the unconscious conscious and keep repeating the same patterns, Carl Jung. So, when you deliver a message like that with love, with respect, and with the intentions of helping someone to grow, most people will appreciate it. Like, oh, I didn't realize that. I couldn't see that. And then you got the opportunity to make a change. It's a gift. It's a real
I
difference.
think that's a very good attitude to have. Like I think there was some very famous scientist that said that the more I learn about the world, the universe, the more I understand that the less we know. So
Absolutely. It's like going backwards.
yeah. Hey,
Amazing.
it's been a great call, Actor, and you've been giving a lot of secret sauce here from deal making and frankly from a business psychology and world class entrepreneurial way of thinking and how to always try to be better. I I'm very happy and thankful for your time. I appreciate you taking the time to sit down. I know you have a lot of responsibilities in your groups of companies that you're helping and working with and building yourself. So really much appreciating this call and looking forward for the next time when we have the opportunity to talk again.
Absolute pleasure, Joe. Thank you so much.